You know what grinds my gears? As marketers, we're so caught up in what's next that we rarely take the time to learn from successes and case studies of, even the recent past. We've somehow been so conditioned that the past offers us very little insight in a now hyper connected world. But today, I'm going to show you how very wrong that thinking is and finally answer that burning question of, was there actual bull sperm in those Red Bull cans? Howdy, hello, and welcome to the Pop Marketing Podcast. I'm Joe Cox, the Pop Marketer, and it's finally here. A conversation like 30 episodes in the making. If you know me, you knew it was coming, and thanks to our guest, Alicia Kolbe Poole, today we're talking Red Bull. The philosophy behind their brand marketing superpowers and how they completely changed the game of the beverage industry when they entered the North American markets in the late 90s and early 2000s. Polarization, crowdsourcing, content strategy, influencer strategy, brand sponsorship versus partnership, and one of my favorites, myth. 20 years later, Red Bull's approach to the North American market ages like a fine wine, which is really weird in this modern environment. But Alicia is one of my dearest and longest running professional friendships, and she's not only was one of the first marketers to introduce Red Bull to North America's market, but she has since worked with brands like AMC, 5 Hour Energy, and her own startup Balanced Superfood Shot to take all those Red Bull beautiful lessons to some of the most energetic brands in the world. She's an entrepreneur, a brilliant marketer, and her point of view on work-life balance has always been an inspiration for moi. So I absolutely know you are going to enjoy the hell out of our conversation today. So without any further ado, Alicia Kolbe Poole on the Pop Marketing Podcast. Let's go! Hey, everybody. It is Joe Cox again, and you are listening to the Pop Marketing Podcast. And I'm shaking in excitement for today because finally I get to talk about the thing to all of you that I talk to, everybody, that I work with all the time, so much that they probably are completely sick of it. So now I'm just taking it on to the airwaves because today I get to talk about Red Bull, finally. And who better to talk about Red Bull with than my friend of a long time, mentor, teacher, and just all around super smart, awesome marketing lady, Alicia. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me here. It's so fun.
Well, we always catch up all the time. So and we live very near to each other, and we've caught up since we worked with each other at Red Bull and through everything that you've done, which is a ton of different brands beyond that. But we're going to reverse time a little bit and really just kind of, I think it brings us both joy to just talk about our time at Red Bull and most importantly, why that has stuck with us so much. But first, I would love for you to introduce yourself to everybody and kind of talk about a little bit about how did you find Red Bull and what have you done since then?
Red Bull came to me, and it came to me at a time when energy drinks were not a thing. So I was actually working at Harrah's Entertainment, doing events and promotions, and things were great, fun. Of course, if you know, in events and in the casino world, though, there's this bubble that you're in. You go in the morning, it's dark. You're there all day, it's dark. You leave, it's dark. So
That's so interesting. I forgot you were there, yeah. And I always thought about that, especially in any of them. But I had visited through Red Bull casinos, and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world behind the casino, and people going to work there. It would see such a mind trip, I think, to go into an office.
Well, and it's interesting. I think about it now too, that the recruiters that were prepped for looking for the first marketing managers for all the first markets around the country for Red Bull, they had to have a profile, well, who are we going to go get, and that was actually part of on their list. Like, well, who's working in that casino environment? There's that operational side where we're on the casino floor, but then there's behind the house, like back of house, like what's happening underground, Disneyland, and so having somebody that has, both of those, and I like to call it, kind of artist and soldier. The artist, the strategic, the marketing, but also the soldier part where you can shake hands with the consumer and you can be there in the moment when, when shit goes down and you're like, it's like you got to make a call, and, that's what events are all about. You expect the unexpected. So I was, working at Harrah's doing, like a couple years there, and they found me. And I remember sitting at my desk in this like small, little office and going to the website. And mind you, this is, 20 years ago ish, going to the website and seeing these pink cows jumping over a world. That was their website at the time, and I'm like, okay, but I have this like risk taker adventurer side of me that I like to step into the unknown, which is of course why, I was a great fit for Red Bull. But, I took the leap. It was like, I had no idea it was the first, here's what an energy drink is. I had actually went down to the plaza to have my first Red Bull. I went to the Country Club Plaza in Kansas City to O'Dowd's. That was the only place in Kansas City where you could buy it. So it's like probably 4:00 in the afternoon, and I go, and sit at the high top by the bar and order up a Red Bull, and they're asking, do you want it over ice? And I'm like, sure, and so they pour it over ice with the can, the whole,
the
presentation, and I drank
right?
my first Red Bull out of a straw.
They did it correctly, right? Like that was a big deal. Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, but had I known, like, I just take the can and, you can do it that way too. But anyway, so like I had to introduce myself, but that's where it started, and, kind of took that leap. Like, I have no idea what if an energy drink is a thing or not. And that's where kind of it all started.
That's awesome. And it brings me a bunch of thoughts too. But when did you figure out, so you kind of leapt into it, and it's hard to believe a world where you don't know what Red Bull is, but a world where you don't know what energy drinks are. And I mean, right. I'm talking, there is a younger group out there that are in the workforce that have always been energy drinks were always a thing. So it's really hard to understand at the time how impossible of an idea it would be to have anything new break out in the world of beverages and kind of consumer product good drinks in general. Because at the time it was like Coke and Pepsi, and everybody else had kind of flattened it down to as cheap as possible you could possibly get. And here comes something extremely weird and out of the blue from Europe that is a smaller can and like 6 times the price. So it's like, what is this? What are these crazy people?
Right.
When you first got there, did you figure out, okay, this is really different? Like, do you remember a time when you came in that Red Bull College or whatever it was that you were like, okay, there's something really different is happening here?
Well, my first experience with Red Bull is just one I'll never forget. So I actually got hired right 2 weeks before 9/11 happened. So so we're talking like this is just, etched in my brain. And so my first meeting, my first travel, my first experience with Red Bull was flying to Aspen. So I went from Kansas City to Denver on an airplane just like a week after 9/11, like as soon as the flight started. And, everybody who flew back then, around then, knew that feeling, right? And so it was a student brand manager kickoff that was happening in Aspen. So what we would do is, each business unit, and I was part of the mountain business unit that was based in Denver, we would take all of our students from all of the universities and bring them together for a training to train them before the school started. So, that was in, September. and, brought them
Yep.
together, trained them on the brand, introduced them, make sure they're connected, and then give them an experience that they can go back and talk about. Well, we went to Aspen, and the surprise, because we did the training all weekend, and then Sunday morning we go up to the mountain and it's paragliding for everybody. So this experience of like, the Red Bull gives you wings. That's what we did. And then we send them back to their college campus, and it's just talk, 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 right? So much excitement, so much, give them a bunch of cans of Red Bull and some, mini fridges, and we're off and running, right? So that was my first, so I knew, like this was different. This isn't like anything that I've ever experienced before. Um, and there was this ebb and flow over my career with you do the work in your local market, but then you go to headquarters, or you go and you meet up with everybody and you get that energy, and then you go back to your local market and then you spread it. And there was this back and forth of that ebb and flow over all of the years, and that was part of this. Well, we can talk about ambassadors whenever, but that part of like pulling people into the belief of the brand, and then the love, and then you go back out and you spread it amongst your own market.
Yeah, there was a lot of simplicity to it. It's crazy, but I do think it will help everyone to understand before we get into the ambassadors and
Yeah,
the specifics of that too, with athletes and students and all of that, which I do want to touch on. Let's talk about let's peel back, and when you're talking about that ebb and flow and from local to kind of grouping together, could you talk a little bit about the difference in the bottom up approach, where every city kind of had a marketing director or a field marketing director,
yeah,
and it so doesn't match up to any field marketing I've almost ever
yeah.
bounced up against again. But what was talk a little bit more about that overall approach of how it worked from field up, instead of what would be
Yeah,
traditional, like a Coca-Cola or larger brands were famous for just plain cover,
yeah,
right? Like a big national
yeah,
idea, and then you just pushed
yeah.
that out to the bottom, to consumer.
I like to say that Red Bull to me is famous for the no strategy. And I say that from if you're looking from the outside in, you think there's not a strategy, but there is. But it's so simple and so clear. For example, my script for the first 6 months when I was building my market, when I got hired as the first field marketing person, um, was the one pager of our brand personality. I had 12 words. That was my script. And my job was to build relationships with people in my market that aligned with as many of those 12 words as I could. I mean, that's how simple it was. And that's how you started. And so what happens is when as we all know now, because we've been working at home and kind of in isolation, that you can't do it in isolation. You got to go to the mothership, get the energy, be with the other people that are in the same space and aligned with you the same way, when you share those personalities and those traits, and you hear the stories and you have the conversations and you get the ideas, and then you go back home and you do it in your market in the way that makes sense for you. And that is that local marketing piece. So what happened, it wasn't the brand up here saying, go execute this strategy, this strategy, this strategy. It said, here are the people that have an affinity and will connect and be believers and brand loyal. This is who you have to look for. And so go back to your market and build those relationships. So when I say the like non-strategy strategy approach, it was very loose, but it was very targeted. It was focused, because it was like, no, this is who you're looking for. And you either like fit or you don't. And it's an editing game. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to build a relationship with this person, and then I move them over to, this part of my brain. And then you're over here going, they don't fit, doesn't feel right, move them out. And that's just this constant, kind of editing, if you will.
So yeah, that makes me really want to. I think it's a great segue into just relationships in general, and then I mean that involves ambassadorship ish. But what was it? Feels like relationships was at a lot of the heart of especially that localized marketing. What did relationships and ambassadors look like in those markets, and when you manage those?
Yeah. So again, it's this strategy of building relationships. That is really the foundation of it all. And the coolest part, and again, kind of tying back to that, how I knew that Red Bull was different. We didn't all get this budget, for finding people and spending money to get your influencers or to pay for an event or whatever. Um, you know, there was certainly relationship currency that was happening, and then also we had a toolkit. Our toolkit was the cans and what was in the can and the refrigerators and infrastructure that was branded. It was cool premium tables. It was tents. It was, a vehicle that could show up somewhere, if that made sense at the time. And it was, you know, if you give somebody money, you actually take away their creativity. So what we were given is this gift of no money to really work with. Of course we had money to get people all suited up in, their Red Bull gear for our sampling team and our cars and, the product. But really what we had was the product, some cool, bean bags to do pop-up, kind of party lounges, things like that. But it was all, here's my brand personalities, my script. These are the people these are the type of people I'm gonna work with. And here's the toolkit I have to work with. And then you listen to the people in your market. So to go back to this brand down, field up, the field would tell you what was cool. The field would tell you what they want to do. The field would tell you. So when I say the field, it's like my relationships. My people would say, this is what we have going on. And it's super cool. Whether it was a DJ, whether it was someone in the BMX scene, skate scene, motocross, whatever it was, or ski, if it was your market, maybe it was, skiing and snowboarding. It was different, depending on the market.
Right. And specifically, what's going to work in San Diego surf scene or whatever it may be is not going to fly in the Midwest or New York or whatever it is. And that was always what I took too, was that it is allowing each place to be its place and each kind of city and destination to have its own flair, but keeping to these boundaries of what is Red Bull's personality and what are we wanting to give wings to. And it does come back always to give you wings. It isn't Red Bull gives you money. It is we give wings
Right.
to ideas, to people and ideas, right? We give you the ability to spark up that and bring that idea to life. And I talk about this all the time, is that Red Bull's always known for these crazy lunatic events and things that get really big. And I always say, I'm like, it's not because we had a brain trust of super smart marketing. Like, it wasn't ever from us. The ideas were taken from
Right.
those relationships, right? You're asking the people that are the coolest in the BMX scene, what's the craziest idea you've ever had? Or what do you want to do? And we will help you make that into a reality utilizing the tools
Right.
that Red Bull does. And I
Yeah.
still take that with me today, because I'm like, we spend so much time thinking of ideas in a closed off room with a bunch of people that aren't necessarily in the communities or inside the cultures that we want them to be, instead of, and now we didn't even have social at that time. I mean, get
No.
out of town.
No.
These
Yeah.
relationships, Alicia, just to remind everybody, were you went out and talked to human
Yes.
beings.
You walk down the street and yeah, exactly.
And it's hard. People didn't even realize, and I talk about all the time, that influencer marketing happened way before social,
Oh,
right?
for
Like
sure.
this was feet on the ground, and the best events and things would rise up and continue every year, right? Like it would, and then if they were really good, they might pop into different locations, and you'd work with somebody in Denver and be like, cool, let's bring this thing to Kansas City, or let's bring this thing somewhere else because it worked and it seems to fit with yours. So
one of my favorite stories I'll tell really quickly, because it's also it's a lesson in patience and a lesson in waiting and allowing something to happen at the right moment and the right time. We always talked about the right place, the right situation, the right time, like these, like just really that synergy of it all, happening together is really what makes a difference. So, my market that I built was the state of Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri. So, there's not as much happening, from a extreme sport side,
totally,
as you know.
I tell that people that all the time. I'm like, whenever I would travel, it would be people that were really into a lot of dangerous things, and I could play video games. That was probably that was as dangerous as I got.
So you're going to fill the gap for me. This is live, right? Okay. So, so one of the things that I knew Kansas had that was really unique that no one really knew about were these underground missile silos. And so and like anything, like how do you start a conversation? I don't know, you reach out to somebody, you just start talking, right? And then
underground missile, just so everybody, underground missile silos. You're like, what do we got a lot of here? What's weird that is very interesting. And this was back in the day too. Like a lot of people maybe know more about those kind of underground missile silos and how people have fitted them out now. But at the time, this is lunacy. So please continue.
And so there's a bunch of abandoned ones all over, but some people have taken them and turned them into, a home. So I think his name was Ed, actually, but I find this guy and I reach out.
I've had to look him up, by the way. I've had to look this place up to tell people, because I'm like, you're not going to believe me. I have to tell you about this.
So I got invited, so I got invited out to the middle of somewhere in Kansas, it's probably an hour out, outside of Kansas City or more, and we're talking, we don't even have GPS. Like, so, this is like finding this place and get invited. And it's just like you show up. And of course, you don't even know what you're looking for, because it's not a house, it's not above ground, it's underground, And so anyway, get there and I get invited in, and it's just this like, if you've ever been to, St. Louis, where they have the city museum there, it's just like that. It's just like you're just going in like tunnels and, and just, different rooms and around corners and, things open up but it's really heavy and solid and, and hippie. He had, there were drums, and I'm sure he had some drumming circles and some other things that were happening, inside and invited.
It was nuts.
Lots of.
It was absolutely nuts. And you have all these hippie commune type of stuff, like a giant drum room that was like circular. It was crazy. And then you had right next to that, like the missile command, like the where they would push the buttons if nuclear war happened. Like it was this amazing, like, contrast, right? That they had set up.
So, so here I am. I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is unique to my market. This is kind of cool. And so you kind of just like start bubbling things up, right? And this isn't an influencer situation at all. This is just a an uncovering of something interesting that might, you don't even know where it's going to go. And so I actually passed the baton onto when I moved to, my next position at Red Bull and into like more of a consumer marketing for the region. I passed it along to Miss Ivy. And so she took the baton and the relationship and then figured out a way to connect it. And so we actually hosted, and God, I wish I could get the video for this. I'm sure there's some video somewhere, but we actually hosted, a underground video game tournament in the missile silos in the middle of Kansas.
I remember. I was there.
I like, that's like, you can fill the gap for me because I wasn't there.
It was it was the most crazy thing. I mean, these guys, and this was LAN time,
Yeah.
right? Like this is LAN gaming. This is before before streaming and anything was even just a dream.
Right.
And bot gaming and competitive gaming was definitely a thing. And they were having huge LAN tournaments in all over Kansas City,
Yeah.
right? But it was almost like the rave
Yeah.
scene. They were doing it and renting out these giant spaces and having them all night. But they had all that stuff together, like that group,
Yeah.
and so they were ready for mobile, right? They were ready to be mobile. So really the only thing that to figure out was how are you going to get it was LAN, so you didn't need to really be hooked up to the internet,
Right.
right? Like they didn't have to have high powered internet because a LAN was all about, hey, all the gamers that are competing hooking their computers up instead of hooking it up and playing through the internet, right? So we bust all of them in and had this insane, like just insane of tournament inside this missile silo. And again, Red Bull didn't take the Red Bull let the people who were in that gaming culture at that time and the leaders there take the front
Right.
stage, right? Like they were the ones that to them, to everyone, looked like it was the coolest thing in the entire world that they brought this to them. It wasn't, it was Red Bull was in the background,
Yep.
in the
Yes.
pictures,
Yes.
in the
Yep.
stuff that was around the event. It wasn't trying to force itself
Yep.
as the main person on stage, and having making sure, could you just tilt your head and make sure you're drinking that
Right.
drink? There wasn't none of that.
Right.
It was just the
Right.
most wicked, crazy event
Yeah.
ever, and still ingrained in my memory. Many
Yeah.
others, but like, and still that one is ingrained in my memory as one of the most nutty things,
Yeah.
and has inspired a ton of ideas from me after that. But it's totally right. You don't know exactly whenever you're cultivating these relationships, it's you're collecting, and then you never know when something will pop up, and you're constantly tending your garden,
Yeah.
right? But you don't know when something's going to pop up where you're like, oh, perfect, I got that.
Yeah.
Like I have been, and since you're not spending a ton of money on them, and it's just product and conversation and actual relationship, there's not a lot of these
Oh,
expectations of, oh, I got to really use these people. And
absolutely. It just takes like a complete weight that's lifted off and it brings it down to, and I know this is a big word right now, but that authenticity. It's real. Nobody's doing anything out of obligation or, expectation or whatever. It's because we both want to be there and we both want, and Red Bull's always good at like, lifting up their people, right? Lifting up their relationship and allowing them to be center stage, like you said.
yeah, that's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah.
So I do want to get back to the student side of it too, because it wasn't just the ambassadors could be,
Yeah.
and the relationships could be anywhere. It could be bartenders, right? Because on premise was a big deal. You were talking about the perfect pour and all that, and so they could be bartenders, they could be DJs, they could
Yeah.
be athletes, and then students was another one of them as well. Students at
Yeah.
the larger colleges in the country.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, because that was really I don't know of any other kind of student ambassador program or college ambassador program that was as
Yeah.
rich, as Red
Yeah.
Bulls. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It was truly amazing. And to be able to hire the first students at all my colleges feels, really good to do that as
and you
well.
still
And I
know
think,
them, I guarantee it. I mean, I know them. I've
oh
worked
yeah,
with them. I've founded these
yes.
people.
Yeah, yeah, and it is an amazing stepping stone into a very cool, career, if you will. And also just like, and I know I didn't really finish my introduction, but I took that concept of the student brand ambassador in that collegiate space over to 5 Hour Energy. So I was recruited to go there and build their national field marketing program. And the thing that's so interesting to me is because uh, 5 Hour is a sales, more of a sales led company versus a marketing led company, which is what Red Bull was. It worked, but it worked in a very different. It felt different. It was just different. It had more of that like kind of agenda that was attached to it versus this very authentic on the collegiate side, for Red Bull, where it's like, we lifted up these students and they owned their ecosystem, which was their college campus. And we went to that. We knew it's like that reverse mentorship type of thing. I can't show up on your campus and have the same experience or impact that student can, because they are a student and because they know the campus, because they know the people, they know the organizations, they know the underground workings and the culture and the feeling and what people get excited about and what people don't get excited about on that campus. And so you really have to listen when you're doing that. And that was something that we gave them, product, we gave them fridges, and we listened to their ideas, and then we helped kind of grow and nurture those ideas to make sure that they fit, with what we were doing. But we also let them take chances on things. And that was what a cool, kind of environment to learn marketing and experiential consumer, whatever brand building in a space like that. It was super safe.
Yeah, it was. And I do like, I liked how you said it too. I think sales versus marketing led brands. I mean, it's a lot about quick versus slow, right?
Yes.
Like build really fast, and because both brands are exorbitantly successful, right? So it's not that one way is right or wrong. It is, where do you feel like you fit in your brain and where do you fit what you want to do? And the sales side, and I say the same thing about influencers in general. And it's like, it's totally cool to have influencers on a more sales side, a faster, like, I want my ROI on that. But if you want brand building and you're in it for the long term, it's that marketing that really that builds culture and that you can actually see.
So I feel like I'm having this image of an EKG in my mind, but it's the brand building side of this equation is constant and going and straight, and it's just something that you do. And it's not like if you're an investor in stocks, you can't check every day to see if you made some money and wish I sell. It's like, it's just what you do, and you make a commitment to that. And then above that is the next line that is your promotional spend and your kind of the sales oriented side of it. And it goes like this, based on, what's happening and what opportunities, what campaigns, that kind of thing. But the best brands have figured out that you do both of those things, and not just one. But that's something that's tough. Like,
it's tough. It takes a lot to be able to do both. And that's tough because you see a Nike and you go, cool, get it. Like, for every insane cultural awesome campaign that they put out, they are also sending me an email every week that is like, buy some rad shoes, and they have the ability to shove those two things together and have those two things working together. And it's tough, like you said, for a growing or smaller place to keep those plates spinning, both of them.
Yeah, and so I'm famous for if you've got $1, where you just spend it. You break it at 99, or you spend your $1, and it's if you're really committed to your brand and building your brand, you're going to spend your $1 on those brand plays every day. And that's what, and it's like planting a garden. You plant the seed, but you've got to give it water and sunshine, and eventually it will start to sprout and it will grow. But if you expect that seed to, without sun and without water, give you, if it's a spinach, if it gives you a salad in like 4 to 6 weeks, that's unrealistic. And I think a lot of people, are expecting to not nurture and not, take care of those relationships or build the brand in that way. And you can't do it. It takes that commitment to do it.
Commitment. And it is all about commitment. And it's more like a garden versus a vending machine, right? Here's the thing. Gardens, you're going to put a lot of work in, and you're not going to see a lot until it's time to gather, right? And then you're going to get a ton out of that time that you put in and that focus, which is hard to do because tough to not see the quarterly report and want to, everything now. But the vending machine is awesome too, because if you're hungry right now, you can put money in it and it's going to give you the thing that it might be
Yeah.
sugar, might not be the best, but for your
Quick.
body, but it's going to give you what you
Yeah.
need quickly. Now, both of them are options and whatever that may be. But if you don't have money to feed into the vending machine, it ain't going to, it will stop immediately after the money stops coming in. And that's what I say on the paid campaigns too. It's not bad. It's just, it runs on money. So like, right. But if you want to make something big and you want to make something that lasts and hits into culture, that's fine, but you're gonna have to be planting bigger. You're gonna have to be doing that long-term brand work over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
okay, so what about athletes? Athletes. It's Red Bull covers so much of culture, like b-boys and girls from it that I had at my friend's wedding. I've had all kinds of relationships and different things. We talk college, but athletes is what people normally know, like the the sport side of it. How did the athletes relationship work in Red Bull?
So one thing before we start talking about the athletes, because I think it's the same and different with them. But it's truly, to me, what I learned at Red Bull, one of the biggest things I learned at Red Bull is that friends and business can be together. Like when I say building relationships, Red Bull was built in North America on friendships. And so I'll segue that into, sports. I can guarantee you that the people that were building those first relationships with, all of the athletes, the ones that you didn't know, the ones that were 13 and 12 years old, 20 years ago that are now, worldly known and infamous, those were built on friendships. Somebody who was a Red Bull person and someone who was a surfer, and that's a friendship that was built over time, and they both benefited from that. And again, it goes back to the influencer thing. Those athletes and those relationships were real. They didn't go out looking or calling agents, if you will, to see what, how much it costs to get somebody, to wear a hat or that kind of thing. And what I thought was really unique too was, Red Bull didn't just it didn't just produce a whole bunch of cool stuff that was branded and say, hey, if you're talking with an athlete or whatever, give them a hat or give them a sticker or something like that. The relationship grew. It was just like the garden scenario we just talked about, right? When that friendship started to really, lock in and
evolve and get to a point where it was starting to be more serious, it would.
That's when, then there were conversations. It's like, what can we do for our athlete that is exclusive, that's unique, that's specific to them, something that they would want. And so we custom made, and everyone's seen it, but we've custom made helmets and gear for, athletes, things that truly would mean something to them that they would wear with pride and knowing that no one else has that.
Based on their style, sport, everything. Like I remember you getting, like, it would be whatever kind of hat that they were known for wearing or whatever it is, it matched their style and their sport versus, hey, pick anything you want on our merch store. Like, go get some merch and pick there's some cool stuff and there's 3 hoodies and this. No, it was everything. If you reached that point of, and there were a lot of different levels of athletes, from local to national. But if you could reach that, you would get, it was a thing to get to not only wear the gear, but I will bring this up now too, which a lot of people, I always tell people, is like, it was a lot more like a religion. There was rules. There was just rules. And one of the rules was I didn't wear the Red Bull logo. I have one jacket that's got the Red Bull logo from a Midwest meeting that we got. And everybody was freaking out because it's like, you don't wear the logo, even if you work there. The only people that wear the logos are the people who are sampling teams that are going out and our athletes, right? Like the partners, the Forbes on that side of things. So it was... It meant something, right? Like it made the brand and the logo valuable because not everybody was able to wear it unless you ordered something off of eBay, you know.
Yeah. I remember lots of conversations like this with my, with my team that was working for me, and everybody wanted their own stuff or whatever. The idea, like this conversation happened a lot, but it was told to me, and it was, the idea that someday someone would be washing their car with a t-shirt that had the Red Bull logo on it was so just demeaning and unconscionable. I mean, it was just like, that can't happen. Like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, it'll be
So
special.
yeah, it is. It's special and it means something. And we're not just going to throw our logo all over the place for no reason. There's intention behind it. And that's why you don't see like a Red Bull retail store where you can go in and buy everything, because that would make it not as valuable, right? And so that was really drilled into all of us when we, and we were very protective of our logo. We had lots of conversations around, I'm going to sponsor an event and throw the logo, now we were doing a lot of our own events, which Red Bull still does a lot of their own events. So it's how you do it that's a little different. So when you're supporting an event, Red Bull would show up with ice barrels, would show up with a tent, would show up with the signature piece, whatever that might be. So you knew we were there. You knew we were part of something if it wasn't ours, but we weren't going to just fall in line like everybody else and, put our, logo on the t-shirt and on the signs and, that kind of thing. We just really, no.
Wasn't going to happen. And that was where I learned too of like partnership over sponsorship. Like, I don't want, if you were handing me a sheet for a sponsorship of an event and you've handed it to everybody, that's the same sheet that all your sponsors are using, I don't want it. I want to add something to I want something that only I could bring you, or this brand could bring you, or we could bring together to it to make it better for the people involved or the athletes involved. I don't need to know how many brand placements you're going to have in the handouts, or that it has never been valuable to me. And Red Bull is what taught me that, right? That I still use now.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to that creativity. Like, you're taking away that creativity if you're just handing me a piece of paper to check the box of what my sponsorship level is and how I want to write a check. That takes all of the creativity out of it. And you don't have to have a conversation that up levels it to the next, place that truly makes an impression for your brand. And so that was always, and I will admit, I had days where it's like, man, it would be so much easier to just do that, wouldn't it? It'd be so much easier just to write a check and click a box and here how much, how many cases do you want? And I'll send the team out or whatever. But that was not the plan. Like, that was not part of the strategy. And again, it goes back to that, like, the non-strategy strategy. So it's against the grain. It's the, the rebel. It's the, and we were very polarizing too, right? Because we wouldn't show up the same way everyone else would. Sometimes it didn't go well, and that's okay. Sometimes we said no a lot, probably.
Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't a fit, and Red Bull was got very popular, and then everybody, and there's so many opportunities, but you have to really whittle through them because you can only do so much, right? Like, there's only so much of resources that you have and can do, so you have to kind of choose it wisely. One story I remember, I don't know if it's real, you could probably tell me, but it was a Shaun White story, and you were talking about athletes that when they were younger, and you might have been hinting towards that, but I had heard that when Shaun White, who's gold medalist snowboarder, the biggest snowboarder in the world, was young and growing up in the snowboarder culture, he was always seeing his favorite athletes wearing all this just rad Red Bull gear, and to him it made that bond of like, dude, I know those people and the relationship they have, and they're really actually in it. They're not just, here's a bunch of money, here's a list of gear, and it made such an imprint on him that when he was actually then going from a 12-year-old to a 14-year-old that was now going pro, or whatever it was, however young he was when he went pro, he was of course, every energy drink on the planet was now after that. There was Monster. There was so many different places just throwing money, and Red Bull didn't throw the money. It didn't, even on the bigger side of bigger athletes. And it was like, there wasn't even a question. He was like, nah, I mean, this is my chance. I know what gear I'm going to be, getting from them.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking of Shaun White, because he was in the snowboarding, which is closer to my kind of, in the mountain area. But yeah, and that just goes to show kind of that consistency and that staying true to who you are. And that was one of the things too, that just like, I think brands today have a hard time just staying true to who they are, and being themselves, because that would have never happened had we started paying athletes and not doing the work of building the relationship and the friendships, and like you said, like Shaun probably, he didn't hear it directly from Red Bull. He heard it through all his community, which is a snowboarding community. And so he knew how solid it was and what he wanted. And money didn't matter. Like the money was not. So if you don't make money part of the equation, then it won't be on both sides, right?
Yeah, and then just to show how that relationship builds, it builds from that sponsorship and relationship, and then whenever I remember years later when I was out of Red Bull, him going to the Olympics, and they built a training area for him, a house in the middle of nowhere that was his training facility that you'd have to, I think it was like he had to fly to get there. So no one would bother him. But who on the planet, again, it wasn't probably Red Bull that was like, hey, we have an idea to give you a place in the middle of nowhere. It was probably like, it was a idea that came from both of them. And that's why he thought that relationship was important, because it was the true partnership, not just, hey, well, I'm getting into the Olympics, I'm going to need a few more zeros on that next paycheck, right? Things that money can't buy, right? Like things that money can't buy, only relationship can get to, so.
Yeah. And I use that partnership word like friendship. Like in the Red Bull world, it was friendship, right? But it's that partnership concept with what you were talking about. It's not a sponsorship; it's a partnership, and that's
And friendship is interesting too, because I really think it kind of just means it doesn't have to get. You don't have to put too much into it. It's, would you hang out with these people on the weekend? Would you call these people if something crazy happened in your life? Were you hanging out? If you were having a little backyard barbecue, they would be there, right? Or they'd be on the list. They're true relationships and friendships and people you can mix inside of your home life as well. And I know that's really big for you, and you've taught me a lot on that, of like, you can have that unity without having one of them take over, right? Without having the toxicity that could happen it doesn't mean work takes over your life. It means that you actually find a unity with those two, that they can exist together.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is that work life integration with intention, like you said, can feed the other, right? They support and feed the other if you make the right choices, and if you're really aware to like what you're intentional, and you're aware of what you want to bring into your life and that work. But a lot of people don't see that the same way as I do, because I learned that in a very different place. Like the people that I worked with at Red Bull are also my friends, and I'd also spend time with after work. I mean, you would go somewhere and you'd spend all day working, and then at night you would hang out all night long, and so to some people that might seem like, oh, that's not healthy, or that is not anything that I am interested in. But I didn't feel like work ever. It never felt like work. There was just enough. But there was the balance on the other side of it, because I go home. You go and you come together. It's that ebb and flow again. You come together, you get that energy, you share the stories, all of that. Which in our world right now, we're being shown different ways to connect, but connection is core to who we are. However you do that, so you have that connection, and then you come home, You come back home, you take a break, you reflect, those types of things, and then you go back again. And so, and over time, that's kind of that building of that stair step, right? And so it's elevating and getting you to where you want to be. But it is possible. I truly believe that integration, of work and personal I've blended it my whole life.
Right. And it's like, it doesn't fit with everything, and it might not fit with a traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
But if that's what works for you,
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. There's just tons of different ways to do it. And I'm with you in that I would rather, put it all in the salad, put it all together as long as it, it works.
Yeah. Well, and
for
yeah, and you
people.
have to like figure out those boundaries and really check yourself and be aware, because definitely can go off the rails. I mean, people do it all the time because they're not paying attention.
I've seen it. We've seen it. Like there's a lifestyle part of that too that is not made for everybody. It was crazy.
No.
In fact, I will real quickly, we'll wrap up here in a second, and this is why I love talking to people way after things happen versus talking about like all the new cool stuff people are doing now, because I never get it straight. We have to edit, right? And I'm still editing, but I do remember I felt like a lot of things were were kind of tests. So there was a thing that Red Bull would do at anytime you got a job. Yeah, I was a lowly, in charge, the position in charge of all the sampling teams, the cars and all that stuff in Red Bull when I started. So it was cheap labor, like I was just starting out, but they sent me immediately to Santa Monica. That's crazy to me. I'm really early in my career. I'm like, okay, is this how it is everywhere? Like, this is just how marketing works. And so I'm in Santa Monica, and we meet a bunch of other, managers that are also going through Red Bull College. So if you're going to work at Red Bull, you go, again, it's that ebb and flow. You are going to go to the mothership, and you're gonna, and at that time, don't know if it still happens. I don't know enough people there anymore, but you'd go to the mothership, and that would be that you got well, how would you say, almost like dipped in like the culture of Red Bull. Like, again, what you're saying, you got to go to the mothership, you got to see it all happen. And I was there, and everybody there, of course, is just like immediately you're connected, you're there, everybody's cool. And that first night, hey, you're adults. We're young. There's a lot of younger people. You're adults. We're all jazzed because we're meeting all these cool people. We're in a cool spot. Go out. Have fun. Have fun.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow morning at 8 in the morning for another all-day training, right? Like, and there wasn't any kind of like, watch out. It was just have fun. Most of us were able to cope with that. One person was unable. Wasn't unable, and I think he locked himself out of his hotel room naked, and he had to walk to the front desk to get another key, but he wasn't really talking right. It was a debacle, and that next day he was kind of half there. We never saw him again.
Yeah.
So it was almost like this test. It was almost like a test to be like, cool, all right, well, you're going to come out. Let's just make sure that you can handle the professional side as well as the side of the brand and all the fun part, right? Because you have to really tighten that together to be able to survive it.
Oh, there was definitely a lot of opportunity to test that line.
Yeah, and people always say like it was, meetings were always, there was a lot of liquids around me at all time on the national meetings. There was a lot of waters and Red Bulls. Cans at the end of the day, just because the night before it was, there was always something, an amazing experience.
Great, stayed at great hotels, great parties, great events, cool people. I mean, it was, I was spoiled, totally spoiled.
Well, there was the Hawaii trip that you were on. There was, and then I heard stories of they actually at one point they took everybody in North America to Austria. And I've heard, that one is like
Yeah.
lawsuits could happen. There was last calls in a hospital to somebody in their family because of things that happened there.
Yeah.
They were fine,
Yes.
but like the stories, and I think we can wrap it up on this. How important the power of myth was. I never met Dietrich. Like, it was a myth. The owner was a myth. The brand was like this. There was always all these cool things that we knew, but they kept myth very much alive in it. And I think it really charged
Oh,
the brand in a crazy
absolutely.
way. How did that play with you on the myth, and how much of it was actually
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
designed that
I
way?
think there was a lot of this being in the know or thinking that you're in the know and that belonging. So, I'll use the cult word, but like, that was definitely, kind of a feeling about it. The, is if I put my marketing hat on and like my communications person hat, um, you know, it's really interesting in the conversations we had around, oh, when people would tell you stories, like consumers. So we were always talking to the consumer, and they would tell you stories of, is it true, is there bull semen in Red Bull? you know
Oh yeah,
we were we
that
were
happened
we were
daily. That
trained.
was on a daily.
Yeah, we were trained. Like, you don't dispel that. Let them own it. Let them have it. Let them wonder. Let them that wonderment side of it, and that the mystical brands. I don't know. Maybe there is, and just like kind of having fun with it. That would not go over with some brands, right? I mean, there's some brands that's like, we educate the consumer and these are the bullet points. We do not stray, that kind of thing. But especially in the time when we were building the brand, that that was creating word of mouth, and that is what it was all about. The stories, and because you want to tell a story to see how someone's going to respond. You want to tell the story are you looking for truth, or do they know something you don't know? You're just trying to like discover. And so it creates this beautiful like extension of what we could do individually, what other people could do for us. And of course it was, you know everybody had to go try it themselves. And of course it's Red Bull, it's not some crazy but at the time nobody knew what Red Bull.
Magical elixir,
Yeah, a magical
right?
elixir. But there were stories that were tied to it, and like, how was it discovered? And Dietrich was this, it was in Thailand, and he was a toothpaste salesman, which though that part of the story actually is true. But then when it got here, there were some liberties with the story, and so it got to take its own life. And I feel like that was part of the brand building experience that happened. And i've I've found it really interesting how Red Bull was able to tell two different stories almost, from this very whimsical cow character communication piece of it, and then the hardcore, kind of gives you kind of the extreme sports and the different ways that was played out. There was a lot of really interesting dynamics and pieces to the brand, but there was a commitment to all of that. And so everybody just like went in, and and you did it. But that word of mouth piece, it was magic.
Yeah, and that you brought it up too. It came from the people and was owned. And if you're going to start a cult, a religion, and the people are going to really believe and love your brand that are working for you, yeah, I remember stories of when Sugar Free came out, because it was the idea was the can is all you need. But when change happens, you want to bet everybody you got to get that change as the brand up here. You can't just make calls, off the whim. It didn't work like that. There was true ownership, and I heard it was a knockout drag out, and debate whenever it was just going to add one more product, just one more thing to bring that sugar free to life. And that, I think, it was the magic of it, to say, yes, I want people to be that. I want that. You want that debate. You want it to be hard to make big shifts like that, right? Which kind of now people are like, well, you want to be able to shift as quickly as possible. For big ideas, maybe that's not that is not how you're going to hold on to kind of the source of things. Maybe you hold on to certain things really hard, to be able to hold on to them. And a lot of times, I think we're trained a lot to be like, well, you got to be fast on your feet. So if something's not working, throw it in the trash and let's like do something else. Well, 10 years down the road, you're going to you might not have gone anywhere. You know?
Right. Right. I think it goes back to that difference between building the brand and then having that promotional play. Those are two very separate strategies, separate, ways of, executing.
I mean, we could go on, and we probably just do another one
Yeah.
that gets into things. And we're even talking to each other about some other ideas about kind of bringing some of the voices and stuff together from a lot of the stories we talked about today. Because I mean, again, these friendships and relationships I've tracked with everybody, almost everybody, from that time period. Unlike any other job, I keep track of them every day, whether it be through social or just once in a while calls or hey, how you doing? And weirdly enough, that whole group is doing some pretty cool stuff out there in the world.
Well, and to that point, I think there's two things here. There's this like connecting around the stories of Red Bull during that time when we were building the brand. And then what's everyone up to today? What are they working on? What are the projects? Because it is so interesting. And those two stories alone, oh yeah, I mean that would be a blast.
Well, okay, so more to come. Where can people find you online? And what are you up to these days that you're excited about?
So I have aliciapoole.com. I am just rounding out 5 or 6 years in a startup, Balance the Superfood Shot. That was super fun. Got me into the natural foods industry, and I'm a huge
which is a passion of yours
total
too.
passion.
Then
Yeah, like my core values are natural health, fun, and connecting with people. Those 3 things. As long as I get to, I'm good. So I get to do that a lot, which is fun. So that natural food industry, that's I'm also doing some work with unity.org right now. So doing kind of a toe in the nonprofit and getting my digital skills kind of honed up and ready to go. And then I've got a couple other projects. I've got a CBD thing that I'm working on. So that's definitely not just kind of a run of the mill. There's some interesting components to it. So we'll see where that goes in the next maybe 3, 4, or 5 months.
Yeah, and I'm interested. So another thing that we do is anytime I know that anywhere you go, I'm totally getting hooked to do whatever you're doing, because again, that's a whole other conversation. But cold Red Bulls were in your backpack, your trunk.
Yes.
You are always, I don't care how high up you are ready to be able to sample and to get somebody trial, right? That was and it was part of your life, and you've always done that. Yeah. Like on any product, it's always in our fridge because you're like, hey, here's a few while you came and visited. Here, take some of these, drink them cold or whatever it may be. And I bring that with me in all products and things that I want to like work with. I always love that about CPGs. It's like the ability to like hand it to somebody and talk to them about it. Yeah, and if you don't want to, you probably shouldn't be there. If you didn't want to, if you were like, I don't know, then you might want to rethink where you're at.
And that's exactly it. It's about, alignment. And it's like, and I know myself now. And of course, ever since my Red Bull days, it's like, I know when I'm not where I should be. So, it's pretty easy to share things with people that you believe in. And we didn't really get into that conversation today, but there's this, kind of difference between, just, from a marketing standpoint, letting someone know it's out there, giving them a try, and then just, like, oh, hope they buy it, but it's like really wrapping them into that belief part of it. And yeah, I can't do anything that I don't believe in.
People know when you're excited. People know, and I was on a phone call the other day and I was like, dude, he was talking about a new business thing. And I'm like, you're back. Like I can tell, because even online, people have always sensed that on me too. It's like, if you're passionate about something, it's like an aura, and people want it, right? So if you really believe in the thing that you're doing and you're not selling it,
Yeah.
you are sharing it.
Yeah.
And there is a huge difference. And it's just one of those things where you have to, that's where you're trying to triangulate. Whatever that thing is, it could be a billion things, but whenever you can really believe it, nothing feels like work or sales or whatever it is. It feels like you're sharing it.
Yep.
Because you want that person to have
Yeah.
to fix a problem or to do the thing.
Yeah, which is
I'm
yeah.
pumped now. It's a great way to start the
Yeah,
weekend.
well, and you'll have to come join me. I'm actually doing a 2-week detox with a bunch of people for a couple weeks, kind of a spring reset. And that's my other kind of passion on the side is, helping people through, just thriving. So like, it's kind of like
I could use
it's the
it.
new
I could
diet.
use it.
It's, essentially instead of like dieting all the time, you just like 2 times a year, just like focus for 2 weeks and get really serious about what it is you need to like, pop into a new habit and go from there. So yeah, I've got
I love the seasonality of it too. I love the seasonality because you probably need one around when seasons change to wintertime and as things are kind of blooming and it's
yep,
like bring it
yeah,
back in. So
spring cleaning.
I'm
Take
easy.
the junk out.
I'm
Yeah.
easy. I'm ready
Oh,
to go. Especially after last year. Thank
yes,
you
this is
so much.
awesome.
It's always such an extreme pleasure. Thank you for the time. It's so easy talking to you about this, and I'm sure we'll continue those conversations. So thanks for sharing with everybody, and thanks for being on the Pop Marketing
Yeah,
Podcast,
thanks,
Alicia.
Joe.